everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Cinema Crusaders. This is a little bit of a delayed or extended Halloween movie madness and our interviews with horror creators from movies and also comics and books. Because not only we're not only Cinema Crusaders, but we're also Comic Crusaders. So this is a little bit of a special for all of you. I am very happy to be introducing and interviewing both of these gentlemen. First, I'm going to introduce the founder and CEO of Omen Comics. He's here to talk about Omen Comics today, along with one of his creators. But I am very happy to introduce to you Michael Nunneley. How you doing, Michael?
Hey, how's it going?
Wow, very good, very good. And I'm glad that we finally were able to do this. I apologize for delaying a little bit. I was a little under the weather, but hey, we've gotten it in. We're going ahead and we're going to do this interview, and it's going to be great. Looking forward to it.
Hey, no problem at all. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. And then the next gentleman probably needs no introduction. You've seen us on a lot of podcasts together, but on top of being part of Sloppy Spoilers and a Cinema Crusader, he is also a writer and creator for Omen Comics, none other than the most famous or infamous Steve Shadewing Sellers. How you doing, Steve?
Happy late Samhain to everybody. I'm here, and I'm glad to talk about everything that we're doing.
Awesome. Outstanding. Well, first of all, I guess I have to ask, because I know, Steve, you were originally, when I first met you in Texas, and you've moved since then. And sure. Michael, I know you're in California. How did the two of you meet and start collaborating? Because I think it's fascinating, especially in the indie comic scene, that people from all over the world are collaborating on projects. So
I used to run a comic book, like an online comic book magazine called the Chico Comics page, where I reviewed comics and I interviewed people and stuff. And Steve was one of the writers that I had on that was reviewing comics for me. And well, when I decided I wanted to make comics, I started getting into it. I realized that there was at least when we first got into it, that there was at least one title I just could not write on my own. I couldn't, like, I had the character, I had the story, but it just couldn't get the flavor right. And I went and asked Steve. I said, "Hey, I got this title, White Druid of Michael Nero. It's kind of a neo Sherlock Holmes kind of a thing. Would you like to write for it?" And he came on and did it. He's been on ever since.
Awesome, outstanding.
Yeah, that particular title. By the time I had been writing for Chico for quite a bit. This was before I came on to Comic Crusaders and all the fun stuff that we've been doing here. But it was kind of like the same sort of things that we were doing. And then Mike would come in and say, "Yeah, I've got this idea for the Omenverse," and there was just so much world building that he presented, and it took kind of like a while to sort of figure out what I was looking at. But once I did, I saw the core of what I thought Michael Nero was, and then I said, okay, yeah, I can do something fun with that. I can do, it's magic Sherlock Holmes, more or less. And I've always had an attachment to Sherlock Holmes because my grandfather was heavily into it and he got me into it. And so it's like, yeah, I can go ahead and do my own take, and I can kind of add this whole thing. And then the idea that Nero has this third sight that lets him see ghosts and, demons and other worlds and all of this. And then all of that came together. And I feel like Nero had evolved into a different character because of that. And yeah, I'm still been continuing to go on that.
Outstanding. So, I mean, that's a great segue into the next question I had. So, Omen Comics, I do want to talk about the company a little bit, but you talked about the Omenverse. One of the things I've noticed right away is that you really have this large scale project that you're trying to put together. It's very ambitious. You have the Omenverse. I know there's also it's tied into Revelation Comics with the Blitzverse and stuff over there as well. Yeah. What was your thought on that? Where is it now? Where do you see it going? Because I've gotten a chance to read some of the comics you put out. It looks like you've got your standard superhero stuff, but with a little darker flair, but definitely with horror elements as well. It's very cool.
Yeah, I would say that Revelation is really kind of like the aside stuff that the Omenverse doesn't fit into. I think it's pretty much the way that we describe that.
Mm-hmm. As far as as far as that goes, I actually, the Omenverse goes, I originally had this really large story I had been working on for a really long time, and I actually tried to tell it as a, like in a single title,
Hmm.
but there was just so much going on at once that it was just too convoluted with all the different stuff happening, and it just needed to be broken into several titles, and that's why we ended up with we're actually going to have 6 altogether titles.
Wow, that's great. And do you plan on eventually bringing all the titles back together every now and then to do like I hate to say this because it's become so uh, cliche for DC Comics, but like an Infinite Crisis or something type, combined book, and then they kind of go their separate ways, do that type of thing. But hopefully
Oh,
not become like DC where it's like we kill somebody and bring him back like 2 issues later or something like that.
no, no. There's already there's crossovers between the titles
Hmm.
where characters appear in other titles and stuff, and their stories intertwine. There's references to other stuff going on in the individual titles. Um, the only title really that is going to need some bringing around to connect to the whole thing is probably Guardians of Alea.
Okay. Well, real quick, it's funny you mentioned Guardians. I've got 3 previews that are on your YouTube channel. Everyone go check out Omen Comics on YouTube. But we have previews of several of those titles. I've got Guardians, one for Guardians. I got one for oh gosh, what I'm
Omen
blanking.
and Gallowsman.
Yeah, Gallowsman. Gallowsman is
Yeah.
cool. I was just blanking on it. So senior moment. Sorry. So we could throw either one. I want to throw all 3 of those up. But what one would you like the audience to check out first? Do you have a preference?
Well, let's talk. Let's talk a little bit about Omen Comics,
Sure.
about the Omen and Gallowsman title, and then we'll get into Guardians.
All right.
So
So let's.
how about Omen first?
All right. Here we go. So everyone out there, this is a preview for Omen from Omen Comics. Check it out. Here we go. Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, that is completely like just right up my alley. I love the stuff with the demons and the angels and everything. What an incredibly cool looking comic too. So tell the audience a little bit about Omen. I know a little bit about it, but I'm sure they want to hear about it from you. What is Omen all about?
Okay. Okay. I guess I feel like first I got to give a little bit of background on how I came into the character.
Okay.
Um, I was actually hired by a company that doesn't exist anymore, and I use the word hired loosely. Um, um, they brought me on to create a universe of characters, which I actually already had going. Like I said, I'd been working on the Omenverse for a long time,
Hmm.
and so they're like, "Hey, could you create some characters for this universe, and maybe this one title called Omen?" And they had some ideas for the title. It was essentially, I mean, even the panels they were talking about using, it was like an exact ripoff of Spawn, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Right.
I can't. That just isn't going to happen. And so to form Omen, I took certain elements from Spawn. Like I did like the idea between the war between heaven and hell. That's not specific to Spawn in general, but I like that idea. I
Mhm.
also like the idea of a soldier being taken on to become a part of an army in that battle. Um, in the case of Omen, we're talking about same kind of idea where you got a soldier that was destined to go to hell, but he actually commits what's called the ultimate sacrifice, and because of that, he gives up his life to save his unit, and that gives him the opportunity to earn redemption by wearing the Omen armor.
Cool.
And
And I know that that I love that flaming, I guess what is it, an asteroid coming down to Earth, which is him coming down, after being
yeah,
kicked out of purgatory, and I think that's just such a cool visual. So, is Omen kind of your backdrop for? I mean, it's called the Omenverse, but I got to ask, is it your backdrop for the whole Omenverse? This conflict and everything is what's going on. That's kind of the throughput for everything.
well, it's definitely the foundation.
Okay.
If I can use a Tolkien example, Tolkien took a lot of mythological ideas, and he kind of built this world of Middle Earth and Arda and all that, based around these general kind of Catholic principles and ideas. And I did something similar with Omen. I took that as a kind of a central part of it, and then built in the mythologies of the world around it.
Very cool. So here, I got to ask this question then for both of you. Before we talk a little bit about Gallows Men, do you think if this is obviously you guys are indie and very huge props to your colorist and your artist. I forget his name off the top of my bat. Very talented fellow though.
Tosin Awasika.
He does some great work. Do you think that if you weren't indie, if you were associated with some sort of company, that you would be even given the opportunity to do something like this? Or, do you think it would take almost a lifetime to try and bring the Omenverse to life there? Or is indie really the way to go if you want to bring these kinds of stories to life on your own?
I'm inclined to think that the big two would not go for stuff as dark and as bloody as we probably go for. I definitely think that a lot of the edge that certainly Mike has is not something that I would normally expect from an all ages superhero sort of line. I just don't think that they would do that. And that's not to say that like some of the major indies wouldn't do it, like maybe like an Image or something like that. There's definitely room there for those sorts of things. Maybe if you really wanted to go Vertigo type of stuff or Max, maybe. But I think for the most part, I think that we take an approach that is definitely outside the mainstream approach, and I think that's for the best.
Yeah.
I like having the freedom to do the stuff that we do, and I've never really gotten any pushback at all, and certainly Mike doesn't. He's the one that's kind of calling the shots with the Omenverse.
How about you, Mike?
Well,
How do you feel about it all? Do you think there's an appetite for this? I mean, I think there's definitely an appetite out there for true independents who are pursuing a creative vision wherever it goes. And some might call that niche, but I think that niche is definitely growing. What's your experience?
I think the whole concept of indie comics is growing. There seems to be a lot more interest in it now than there ever has been before. And I hear all these comic book publishers and writers and artists talking about how difficult it is to actually get out there and get published and get their stories so that people can read them. And like I went the self-publishing route before we got with Wicked Publishing. And like I honestly don't think that I could have gotten as far as I have in this amount of time if I was spending I mean I'd have to have spent all that time trying to pitch a story as opposed to actually get it out there.
Right.
And I think that's one advantage that indie has over that. Like Steve was mentioning, there's all kinds of rules and stipulations, and well, you can't do this and you can't show that, and it has to be this many pages and this many words per page, and I feel like independent comics offers creators a bit more creativity, a bit more room to flex their muscles.
Outstanding. Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think you can see it. You look at the way it's taken off on various crowdfunding sites, but just on social media and everything. People are talking about these different stories that you wouldn't get even from, I think, an Image or some of the other companies, even a Dark Horse or an IDW or Vertigo. I think that there's too much inertia that you have to get past to get your story published there. So let's go ahead and talk about. I'm going to do Gallowsman, and then we're going to bring in. After that, we'll bring in.
Guardians of Wind.
Guardians. I am having one of those senior days today. I don't know what is going on. So let's talk about Gallowsman. Let's look at the Gallowsman preview real quick, and then we'll go ahead and get right into this. How's that sound?
Sure.
All right. Sounds good.
Here we go.
That's the Guardians preview.
Oh, I am sorry.
That's all right.
Here we go.
There we go.
Patrick O'Leary, our own Michael Myers.
Stuart Wilson says, congratulations. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
Raphael.
Notice that dog.
Cool. So Gallowsman, let's talk a little bit about this one. First of all, I don't know why, but this reminds me of Dexter meets comic books meets the supernatural. I mean, is that fairly accurate, or what is going on in Gallowsman?
There's definitely some elements in that. I could certainly see where you're getting that from. The Gallowsman title is it's following two different storylines in it at the moment. You got the one I like how Steve put that there. Our resident Michael Myers. He's kind of I'm a big fan of slasher horror movies. And so I just had to have my own slasher in the story there. And really, that's what Patrick O'Leary is about. But there's definitely some supernatural elements going on there as well. He is what you've probably heard the term emotional vampire before.
Oh, yeah.
Where people are just draining on your emotions or whatever. But I wanted to take that to a more lethal level. And Patrick cannot just drain your emotions. Like the more extreme your emotion is, the more of your life energy he can drain out of you while he's sucking said emotion from you. He can literally just dry you up like a corpse.
So it sounds like he's almost a ghostwriter type figure, but less involved with the super or the infernal or something like that. But he can like suck your soul out almost.
It's technically I call it your life force in the comic there. But a lot of his attacks are often physical. For instance, in the very first Gallowsman comic, you get to see him. He takes a wire off of the cage he was in, and he bends it on a rock on the ground and uses it to rip out somebody's throat, stabs another guy with. It's really visceral, his attacks.
Yeah.
And then he tends to he also tends to like to play with his food a little. He wants them to be scared before they eat, so that the meal is more satisfying.
Oh, that's great. So yeah, that's some really dark stuff, but that's really I love where you're going with that. Yeah, wow, that's really some really creative stuff, some really dark stuff. really talking about, I guess he's an anti-hero type. Is that fair to say?
Let me describe it like this.
Okay.
You've seen the movie The Devil's Rejects, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You know how at the end, they're driving on the highway and Freebird starts playing. And right at that moment, you go, wait a minute, I'm rooting for the bad guys. Like, it just dawns on you right at that moment. I've been rooting for these guys now for about a half an hour. I want that effect to happen with Patrick O'Leary. I want people to realize what a horrid and terrible person he can be, and then at the same time go, you know what? I kind of feel for the guy.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I will just add one thing. There's a sign that you can probably see, like to Mike's right, that says "Caution: Bad guy lives here." This has been like one of our, shall we say, mission statements with some of our characters, and I would say that Patrick O'Leary probably embodies it among the best.
Outstanding. So before we bring Guardians in, we've looked at 2 titles so far. We've looked at Omens and we've looked at Gallows Men. Talk a little bit about how do those 2 interact in the wider Omenverse, or do they?
Well, actually, in the not just with alongside the Patrick story that's going on, we actually the titular characters are involved there too. With the Gallows Men. You'll find the same murder that happens in Omen #1 with Sarah Baton, where she cuts that guy's throat open and gives him a Colombian necktie. Mm-hmm. That same murder takes place in Gallows Men #1, except the Gallows Men are seeing it. Now the Gallows Men are actually kind of like a secret organization. They've been around since like the Spanish Inquisition. Mm-hmm. Let me fill this in a little bit. I was imagining the Spanish Inquisition in my mind, and I was picturing things from a gallowsman's point of view. How comfortable would you be carrying out these orders for church and state? They were asking these people to do some pretty horrific things to people that most likely didn't do anything. And I imagined, you know what, I would probably not want to do that. I wouldn't want to take part of that, even if that was a means of making a living. And so this organization called the Court of the Black Hood formed out of these gallowsmen that were against this. And this organization then started policing like the church and the state, people that were untouchables, people high up in corporate offices that nobody could seem to get to. And in order to police them, they created the Gallowsmen, which I actually kind of based loosely on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You notice that they each have a different weapon and they each have a different color, just like the Ninja Turtles. Cool. There isn't 4 of them. There's only 3, but you get the general idea.
Very, very cool. It kind of sounds like maybe a dark Illuminati, or the organization whose name escapes me for the moment, the organization for the Destroyer series from Remo Williams and stuff like that, where they go after the powerful. That is a really cool concept. And to bring it into your wider Omenverse with the supernatural and everything, very cool. Very cool.
Thank you.
All right. So let's look at then Guardians of Illyrian. Elayim. Okay.
Yeah. It's like Elohim. It's kind of like that.
Cool. So let's go ahead and check out the preview for this, and then talk about Guardians and then how that's going to fit in to the wider Omenverse as well. So here we go. Here's a preview for Guardians of Elayim.
I really love the music I picked up.
Mm-hmm. A song talk. And that's Maury.
Very cool.
I just love Toasted art and coloring in this book.
Yeah, he improves by leaps and bounds on everything he does.
Love that bottom panel
letter,
there.
Guido Martinez
Mm-hmm.
did an excellent job on this.
Yeah. That's the variant cover.
Very, very cool. All right. What am I doing here? Cool. Sorry about that. So, Guardians, very different. Seems to be very different in tone and also overall concept. So, tell me a little bit about what Guardians is, the story, and then how that fits in with the larger Omenverse, because it definitely has that almost mythological, high mythology type look to it.
Yes, that's the idea. I would say Marius, who is the guy that you see in the Roman centurion armor, he is responsible for the death of a god. And because of this, the angels recruit him and task him and a number of other people that were involved with that incident to basically go through time and space and fix the damage that they caused. Because the death of the god causes an explosion and it ruptures the time stream. And so what they have to do is they have to go back in time to certain events, put right ones went wrong, and so forth, kind of in the quantum leap sort of sense. The thing is with us is that it's going through mythic history, literary history, in addition to basically anything you can imagine. But I would say, for an example, the first arc that we're going to be doing after this takes them to the Trojan War, where they have to decide whether they want to let Rome die or not. That is the major question for them. So, so these kinds of incidents is basically what it deals with. But it's not just, big epic things like that. One of them is going to be an issue set in the Canterbury Tales, where they're just going along with the pilgrims, they're telling their story, and all of these things sort of connect to things that they have been doing. Very
cool. It's trying to put my finger on, it hits on a lot of things for me. It kind of hits on, wilder Doom Patrol stories, that are kind of out there, but also, Guardians, the DC Guardians story, those types of things where you're kind of like, you're telling the wacky stories that are on the periphery of everything. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say that's fair. Yeah. We're kind of like on the outside of the Omenverse looking in, and yet they're connected to it in the way that a lot of the other characters are not, because they can go anywhere and at any time or any other worlds even. So yeah, and just virtually anything is possible.
Okay.
There are some direct connections though between Guardians and the Omenverse in that Heaven has like a Black Ops type of division in it called Shakur, and that's who recruited Omen. But that same division, Shakur, also is involved in the Guardians. They're the ones that put the Guardians together.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have to laugh when you say Shakur. I was like, is Tupac up there? Is he part of it?
You never know. I mean, they might have brought Tupac back from the dead, and he's working for them. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's a phonetic spelling of the Hebrew word for black.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just immediately when I heard that, I was like, well, now we know Tupac is going to make an appearance at some point, or he's behind the scenes up there. So, looking forward, then, so we've got these three incredible titles. Looking forward, what is the future for the Omenverse, Omen Comics? Any of the titles that you guys are involved in, let's say within the next year. So for next year, 2022, what is the future for Omen, the Omenverse, Omen Comics, Guardians, Gallowsmen, Omen? Anything you guys want to hit on?
I feel like we first maybe you got to talk a little bit about White Druid and Michael Nero, Steve.
Yes. Now, I will say that there is a direct connection between Guardians and White Druid and Michael Nero. I did talk a little bit about it, but the basic idea behind that is he's an assault investigator, and he was born with this ability to see things that nobody else can see, but he can't shut it off. And because of that, he has developed certain coping mechanisms, many of which are not healthy. He is very arrogant. He likes to show off how smart he is. And he kind of has ways to where he sort of adjusts and tries to cope with seeing things basically by being a jerk. And he has an addictive personality as well. He has what we deal with, we call the 7% solution, much like Holmes did. Sorry about that. So he has a 7% solution that he is tempted to not take. and this is something that he wrestles with from time to time. He is a bit of a mess, but he is the greatest detective in the Omenverse. He is certainly one of the smartest people in the Omenverse, and he's very good at what he does. But he can't do it alone, and he has a partner who is also like a father figure and a mentor, and that is Luo Shi. Luo Shi is a thousands of years old Celtic god, and he is the one who has been teaching him the ways of magic. So a lot of it is about their partnership, their friendship, and their relationship. And Lou is somebody who has deep connections to Guardians as well, I will say that.
Is there a place where the viewers could go and check out a preview of White Druid?
Yes, on Global Comics.
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone, go ahead and put that up right now. So you can preview Omen Comics on Global Comics there. So you can also check out White Druid, Michael Nero there, and see that, as well as all the other Omen Comics titles that we were talking about. You could go ahead and preview those as well. So.
And I will say Sarah Baton, who we have seen in other books, is another major player in White Druid.
Very cool. So tell me a little bit about her, Sarah Baton.
Basically, she is an assassin. She is somebody who is devoted to death, and she is somebody who is from, I believe, Rio de Janeiro. She grew up in the favelas, and basically, she did not have a happy childhood. And because of all of this, she was very seduced at an early age by dark magic, by basically criminal activity. And she ended up somebody who ends up hating men particularly, and somebody who is more devoted to death than she is to anybody who's alive. And she is very much an artist when it comes to death. And we see that with the Colombian necktie.
That's very cool. So you've got these high mythology elements. You've got the battle between heaven and hell. You've got some very street level type heroes, or at least have street level powers, as far as fighting and things like that. You got all of these movie pieces going together, and they all form this thing we call the Omenverse. Where so let's go to the question I had a little while ago that I'm sorry I missed out on your other title there, Steve.
Are you talking about Blitz?
Huh?
Are you talking about Blitz?
Yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, Blitz is not really directly connected to the Omenverse, and it's not really horror themed as much.
Okay.
So that kind of makes sense. Blitz really is more like something I came along with years and years ago. I want to say it's in like 2004 or 5, somewhere around then is when I created the character. And I was really kind of inspired by a couple of things. One of them is the idea of the gentleman thief. So if you see on the cover, there is a guy in black wearing a ninja mask. That was, there is a little bit of ninja stuff involved with the character, but it's also mainly my thought was like a character sort of like Cary Grant from To Catch a Thief, or AJ Raffles. You'd see him in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, one of those versions. I wanted to have a character like that. And I just like the idea that he suffers under a magic curse that forces him to do good. And if he doesn't do good things, then he feels constant spiritual pain that he's constantly having to wrestle with. And so he's trying to redeem himself. And he's a very skilled fighter. He's a very good thief. He's very good at what he does, but he doesn't know how to be a hero. The main character, Blitz, is an idealistic speedster who is kind of clueless and very impulsive, and she doesn't know what she's doing. So she turns to him for guidance, because he knows how it is to be, he knows the techniques, and he knows how to be a fighter and all of those things, which he doesn't know. So the idea is she's teaching him to be a hero. He is teaching her how to be effective at what she does.
That's very cool. Kind of a redemption story plus a mentor-mentee relationship as well. That's very cool. Yeah. Just real quick, the other thing I was thinking of with Guardians of Olayam was kind of like Legends of Tomorrow in the Omenverse. So maybe not.
Yeah, that's fair to say. That's fair to say.
Something similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. So how then? So going back to the original question I had, we've got all these movie pieces coming together. What is the future for Omen Comics, these titles coming up in, let's say, 2022?
Well, in 2022, we've got 3 more titles, 2 more after Guardians of Olayam that we want to introduce. The first one is one that I'm doing called Dragon Girl and Albino Warrior.
Ooh.
That one gets into a bit of Chinese mythology, mixed in a bit with some Greek mythology.
Okay.
And yeah, that one is probably of the books I write, which tend to be rather dark and horror themed. Dragon Girl Albino Warrior is probably my more wholesome title. Um, I like to refer to them as they are my light in dark places. They are the genuinely good people that manage to stay good despite the horridness of Kingdom City. Yeah, so that one's gonna be a lot of fun to tell.
So I see you and I are kindred spirits in the things we like to write. So,
Yes, yes, you really are. Yeah, having read both of you, I can tell that. I'm probably the lightest one of the three of us.
What is the second title, if you can share it, that you have planned?
I can. It's called Dark Oracles, and that's actually going to be a title that me and Steve do.
Okay.
It's going to be a 56-page book, and you're going to have 26 pages of story from me and 26 pages of story from Steve. It's Dark Oracles is the place where we tell all of our side stories, like, because there's a lot of histories and a lot of little things that happen that we don't necessarily have time or a place for in the main titles, but the story's got to get out there, and that's what Dark Oracles is for. You want to
Think
talk a
something
little
like
bit about that?
think something like classic X-Men, back in those early days when Claremont was doing the main X books, where he would have you would have like the main story which would like reprint some of the older stuff, and then in the back stories you would have new content with little stories that take place between the main stories, and and it would often like tell important stories in the universe while it was doing that. I think that's more or less what Dark Oracles is. We kind of have our Rod Serling style narrator that we have that is sort of the bridge between everything. But in the middle of that, a lot of these are like little stories in there. And the first ones that I'm going to be doing is basically the Trial of the Guardians. So you're going to see the backstories of some of the Guardians that I can't really get into in Guardians main because I'm just too busy like getting into all the adventures they're being dropped in.
So it sounds like you're really fleshing out your world, filling in the cracks a little bit, giving people some more backstory and everything to make everything else be that much more vibrant, that much more alive.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, in my first couple of stories in Dark Oracles, I get into like stuff like how the beginnings of all the mythologies. Like I get into how all the mythologies fit and how they all surround this basic principle, and the first ages of man and that kind of stuff.
So it sounds like for all you Omen Comics readers, every issue is a must buy, but this one really is a must buy because it's going to give you, just put that much more meat on the bones of Omen Comics and really make it even come more to life for you. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and transition a little bit. We've talked a lot about the actual what you guys are writing, Omen Comics and the Omenverse itself. Let's talk a little bit about each of you as writers yourselves. This month or last month, but this podcast, we were talking a lot about horror because it was Halloween and it was October and everything. So let's talk specifically about your bona fides as horror writers. What influenced you? What kind of things are you interested in when you're writing those scary stories that are designed to either make us think and be scared while we're thinking or keep us up at night? What do you want the reader to do? Do you want to scare the bejesus out of them, or do you want them to get a little creeped out and have to think about some things that they'd rather not think about? And I'm going to go ahead and start with Michael, and then I'll come to you, Steve, if that's cool.
Sure.
So.
Well, I guess for me, as far as the reaction I'm going for is I want them to feel, I do want there to be some fear there, but I'm mostly just trying to get them out of their comfort zone. I want them to, I write into the stories what would terrify me.
Okay.
And as I've been watching horror my whole life, that's usually pretty extreme. And so there's definitely some in that. I tend to be into gore a lot. Like I like slashers and body horror and Hellraiser and that kind of stuff, right? So there's definitely an element of that. When I get into violence, it's usually bloody. There's usually some guts or some body parts hanging out somewhere. I just like to get that visceral reaction. I want them to see the extreme nature of it.
Outstanding. I'm going to pass that as a follow up to Steve as well. Then I mean, it's like, do you write the things that scare you, or do you think of things that you think might be scary and write them? I guess the reason I asked that is that not long ago we interviewed, as part of the Halloween season, Ben Templesmith.
Mhm.
And he says he just writes things that he thinks people would be scared by, not things that scare him. I tend to agree with Michael. I write about things that scare me. Dolls, for instance. Evil dolls are creepy. They should all be destroyed. So, how about you, Steve? Where do you fall on that?
I'm kind of in the middle. I do a little bit of both. One character that eventually will be in the Blitzverse, I don't know when, it's going to be a long period of time, is a character like that, where I had the idea of, because I don't like snakes, I decided to twist the idea and basically create a snake creature who is afraid of humans in the same way that we're afraid of snakes. So, we find all of these people, they would find us, very squishy and very slimy, and it would be something that would unnerve a snake character like that. So that's like one example. But I would say mostly in terms of what I think I do to a certain extent do things that would be scared by, just because I'm not really so much into that for the most part. I really like Lovecraftian horror. I like cosmic horror. I like the kind of thing where, okay, you're dealing with this unknowable thing and this being that is just beyond us, and then we have to just find a way to survive that situation. And then what do we think about that? Thinking about the how insignificant we are in comparison. All that stuff I find interesting. I find Rod Serling type of stuff very interesting. Classic Twilight Zone sort of stuff. Some of the Night Gallery sort of things that I've seen, which is just dropping them in a situation that is just crazy, and just having the character react to these things, and you just not give them an answer, because the idea really is, as Lovecraft said, the fear of the unknown. How can you twist the unknown in a way that can be scary to an audience? And that's another reason also why I love sci-fi horror, because you don't get more unknown than space. So anything out there can kill you, literally. So all these kinds of things are things that you can make it work if it draws on basic primal fears of the unknown, or primal things that are true to you. But I don't think necessarily you absolutely have to do it in a way that take what scares you. I know Stephen King has done that, and it works for him. It worked for Ben Templesmith. But I think every writer has to kind of like find their own answer to that.
I think that's fascinating, though, because I'm listening to both of you, and it sounds like it's such a great mix and match of what scares you, because it's going to appeal to everyone. Because on the one hand, you have Michael, who's dealing with very visceral, very physical gore, in your face type horror. It's shocking. It's taking you out of your comfort zone. And then Steve, you're dealing with the more cosmic horror, the more I guess cerebral is one word I could use for it, but it's the darkness of your soul type horror, and combining those two, you've got all those elements covered. So that's really kind of cool.
Right. I say where we meet in the Venn diagram there would be the supernatural.
Yeah.
That's where our two areas seem to match up there.
You get extra points for including the term Venn diagram there. So you get geek points there talking about Venn diagram. You were an engineer in some life, I think, so at some point. Influences. Steve already talked a little bit about Lovecraft. So let me kick it off with Michael. What are your influences from horror? What type of things really influenced your writing style, the things you like to write about when it comes to horror stories, horror comics, those types of things?
Well, I suppose my hugest influence is like 80s horror. Like one of the first movies I remember ever watching was A Nightmare on Elm Street. But then there was my dad liked a lot of slashers, so I really got into that. He watched a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street, a lot of Friday the 13th. But there was also the little side stuff like Pumpkinhead, Shocker, stuff like that, where it's a little off the beaten path. I think that again, a lot of it comes from just that stuff that shocked me, that stuff that scared me. Like Freddy Krueger, when I was a kid, gave me this recurring nightmare of being, in the first film, Nancy is chased up the stairs, and her feet break into the stairs and into that marshmallowy crap, whatever that is, right? And she can't make it up there. Well, I had a recurring dream like that where Freddy was chasing me up this spiral staircase, and I mean this regularly freaked me out, and I became attached to it. But the first horror, check this out, the first horror I ever wrote was in 5th grade. After watching A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, I had a really good memory when I was a kid. After watching A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, I was actually writing out the script verbatim in my class's journal hour. Where we were supposed to, all the other kids are writing about, well, this is what I did this weekend, or I had a fight with my girlfriend, and I'm writing about Freddie slashing up the PE teacher in the shower. Oh my gosh! When my when my teacher read what I've been writing in my journal, she freaked out.
It's a nightmare on my street.
Right. She called my parents in, and she's like, "I think your son is disturbed. I'm concerned about him around the other students." And it was great. But that pretty much sums up my horror influences, I think.
That's great. That's really great. And for some of those weirder horror movies, I recommend everyone check out The Leprechaun. Jennifer Aniston before she was on Friends, and then Willow plays Warwick Davis. But those movies are great. I have to ask, Nightmare on Elm Street fan, do you have a cutoff on when Nightmare on Elm Street went downhill, or do you think they're all great, or where do you see the movies? Because bringing those up, it's always people who like Nightmare on Elm Street. It's such a great discussion all the time. It's like some people think after one, there was no good Nightmare on Elm Street. So I'm not in that camp, but others insist that all of them are great. So,
my favorites from them are 1, 3, 4, and New Nightmare.
Okay,
and those are the ones that I tend to watch regularly.
Very cool. I like A New Nightmare a lot as well. I think it's very, very cool. That'd be an interesting discussion. Maybe we'll do some Nightmare on Elm Street, and you could be a guest on Cinema Crusaders sometime. We'll talk about some Nightmare on Elm Street movies. If you're up,
that would be awesome. I'd be all kinds of down with that.
Cool.
Yeah, I've only seen the first one, so I can't comment, but I would be up for that discussion.
I have seen all of them. I won't reveal what my favorites are. I'll say that for Cinema Crusaders. Although I'll say that of the two that are considered legitimate by the pinky up hoity-toity crowd, which is the first two, I like the first one the best. So but
I just love Nancy. She's a great character.
Yeah, definitely. Steve, what about you? I mean, you talked a little bit about Lovecraft, but what other horror influences do you have? What really gets you going? Your horror juices flowing?
Yeah, well, Lovecraft and Serling, I think, are my main ones. I also really love Edgar Allan Poe, a lot of the older stuff. I think you could certainly see a little bit of Nero maybe in See Auguste Dupin, but I'm also a huge fan of like a lot of the narrative poems, like The Raven, Fall of the House of Usher. I love the Gothic stuff. And then just classic novels, Dracula, the original one. In terms of the movies adaptation, we talked about Dracula 33 on another show, but but I'm really a huge fan of the Coppola version. I think that came the closest to the book. I think that they really, Gary Oldman was really, really excellent in that. I just love that kind of stuff, this sort of creepy things. And then, stuff like Alien, Event Horizon, which I reviewed not that long ago. And I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of John Carpenter, particularly The Thing, In the Mouth of Madness, Prince of Darkness, all that kind of stuff. I feel like Carpenter was the master of horror in the 80s in terms of film. So it's I would say a lot of blend of all those kinds of things.
Very cool.
I know you. I know you fairly well, Steve, and I feel like you
Yeah.
got to mention Hitchcock in there.
Yes, Hitchcock as well. I think the thing with Hitchcock is I love him in terms of suspense. Like North by Northwest, for example, is just amazing. Vertigo I really kind of like in terms of the way that it just kind of pulls the creep factor, and you have no idea what the hell is going on, and then you find out what the twist is at the end, and that's really really great. And it just kind of messes around with the head of this guy who is just hopelessly in love with this woman, and he doesn't know her, and it's just a complete tragedy the way that it plays out. So, but in terms of the suspense, I'm a huge fan of Hitchcock. I think he is worth mentioning in terms of horror, mainly for Psycho. It's a classic of the genre. It influenced Carpenter's Halloween. I mean, it's still a huge influence on anything in terms of slashers. You can't really get away from it. But I also will say, I will add one last thing, and that is a movie probably not a whole lot of people would think of, and that is Strangers on a Train. In terms of one of Hitchcock's better psycho villains, I would go to that movie.
Am I wrong in pointing out that when you look at Gallows Men and you look at the main character there, you could see a little bit of Anthony Perkins' Psycho in there, especially the way he's drawn?
I think that's an interesting point.
There is there's definitely some of that. I feel like I don't want to step all the way into that, but I could definitely put my foot in the door of that idea.
Cool.
Well, he definitely does have a Michael Myers influence, and Michael Myers is definitely inspired by Norman Bates to a certain degree. Maybe in terms of, shall we say, lineage. That there may be some truth to that.
Very cool. All right, so we got a few minutes left, and I had this thought, and if we had a few minutes left, I want to do it. If you guys are up for it, let's play a little game. I throw out a horror title. It could be a book. It could be a game. A video game, if you guys are up for that, or it could be a movie, and you guys give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, and maybe a few words, if yes, yay or nay on it. How's that sound?
Sure.
Sounds great.
All right, so let's do first Clive Barker's Lord of Illusions.
Haven't seen it.
Haven't seen it?
I liked it, but I feel like maybe I missed something. Because I watched it a couple of times, and while it was entertaining, and I thought it was a good movie. People rave about that, and I guess I feel like I must have missed something when in watching it. I didn't quite pick it up, I guess.
Cool. All right, here we go. Go to comic books. Character. John Constantine, Hellblazer, from Vertigo Comics.
Oh man, we did an entire episode on that for our podcast. I don't know when it comes out, but we've discussed him in detail. He's great.
Cool. Michael?
Yeah, I love John Constantine. One of my favorite animated movies of all time is City of Demons, the John Constantine movie. That movie is just awesome. I've been into Constantine for a whole lot of years. I mostly read his Vertigo stuff, but I'm slowly working my way through it.
Cool.
I will say, Dangerous Habits is my favorite Constantine story.
I have to say that the series that they brought back for Vertigo Comics last year was pretty faithful to the old John Constantine stories, the Hellblazer stories. I was sad that they discontinued it. I hope they bring it back again because I thought it was really good. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, Dangerous Habits, basically, Constantine tricks the devil into drinking holy water. And that's not even the end of it.
All right. Let's go ahead and do the movie, but we can do the movie or the book. Either one is fine. Stephen King's Needful Things.
Oh, I unfortunately know absolutely nothing about this except for that it's about a guy who tricks a bunch of people into getting stuff from him and uses it against them.
He's actually the devil. So yeah, the
devil. I
read
King, but I have not read that.
Okay. Well then, let's go. Do you guys play video games, right? Do either one of you?
I do.
Steve does. I have a few PS3 games. That's about it.
Well, I'm not sure if you played this, but if we have, give me a comment on The Evil Within.
I've seen a little bit of that. It looks interesting. I will say that. It looks like the kind of creepy, sort of Lovecraftian thing that I like. I've seen some playthroughs of it. I have not played it myself, but it looks kind of cool.
Very cool. All right. Let's see. I gotta check my notes. Twilight Zone. Favorite horror themed episode of Twilight Zone. Go ahead and start with Steve, and then I'll go to Michael.
The Howling Man. I just love the idea. It hits the gothic notes, but it's also one of those things that really kind of makes you think about the human heart and the darkness within it, and also the inability of people to heed the truth when they see it. It's just one of those that basically the idea of this one, if you have not seen it, is you have this guy who stumbles on a hermitage. It's raining and he's almost ready to die and he's delusional. And he basically, they are imprisoned the devil in the hermitage. And the only thing that can keep him out is the staff of truth. Nobody, and what ends up happening is the guy comes in. He doesn't really believe. He believes that the guy is like wrongly convicted or wrongly imprisoned, and so he unleashes him, not realizing he's the devil. It's just absolutely really really great. And John Carradine plays the head of the order, and I can tell you that guy could have played Highfather in a New Gods movie. He's that good in it.
Wow, that's a great observation. He really could have. He looks just like him. And also that episode features Vincent Price as well. So, right?
No, it's H.N. Wynant.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought it was Vincent Price as the devil.
No.
So,
no.
All right. Well, I'm delusional then. Doing too much California recreation over here, or something going on. So.
Yeah, it happens.
Michael, what about you? Twilight Zone, favorite horror themed episode?
I guess my favorite is I don't remember the name of it. William Shatner is on the plane and he sees
flight on 30,000 feet.
Yeah,
right. That I loved the whole thing where he's basically sounds like a nut job and everybody keeps checking and nobody's seeing everything and he's like no you gotta believe me. I love that whole the idea of the truth, but it sounds so crazy nobody believes you, and then they finally land the plane and realize it's all busted up, and I loved it.
Fun fact: that episode was directed by Richard Donner, aka I May Make You Believe That a Man Can Fly.
That's
I just love that the director of Superman 1 and 2 also directed this episode.
I love that they redid it in Twilight Zone, the movie, too.
Yeah.
Oh, then Superman comes in when the plane, when the engine gets, taken out and comes down and helps the plane land. So maybe that's what Shatner needed the whole time, is he had Superman to come in and rescue them during the Twilight Zone episode.
Well, statistically, it is the safest way to travel.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to say that.
I think my favorite Shatner Twilight Zone, and now I'm curious if you guys have seen this one, what you think. I don't remember know the name of it, but one of my favorites is the one where they're stuck in the town because their car broke down, and they keep going to that diner, and there's a machine there that tells you your fortune.
Nick of Time.
And it messes with them, and it's kind of got the devil's head on it. I really like that episode.
Yeah, another Shatner one.
Yeah, he's in quite a few.
Yep.
Of course, we featured this episode on our movie marathon. My favorite is Living Doll. That's the one that scares the heck out of me. It scared me as a kid. And of course, my mom collected old dolls. And my dad, when I was like 7 or 8 years old, came in on Halloween and scared my brother and I with the doll. He comes poking around the corner. I was like, I'm talking to you. I was like, that was it. It was done after that. So,
I got to ask you with the doll thing, how you feel about Annabelle?
Oh, terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Evil dolls and evil children are the two things and clowns scare me too. Those three things. I could write about, personally in my writing, this isn't my interview, but in my writing, I like to write about demons and demonic possession and the unseen. But when they do manifest, my favorite things to manifest them in are either evil children, evil clowns, or evil dolls, or evil toys, those types of things. So
to me, clowns do not instill fear, it instills anger. I hate them.
Yeah.
I've been freaked out about clowns since Poltergeist.
Oh. Yes, absolutely. And and It was another one. It's like yeah, that movie is incredibly scary for me as a whole. But when the clown is on, I'm like, yeah, kill that thing, kill it with a stake, kill it with a gun, run it over. I don't care what you need to do, just get rid of it. So last one. This was on our Halloween movie marathon as well. I'm curious if you guys have seen this and your thoughts on it. Kolchak, the Night Stalker.
I really want to see that. I know it influenced the X-Files, and I have to say Darren McGavin looks really cool in that role. I just have not. It's one of those that is on my to-do list eventually.
Okay.
I have not seen it, but if it influenced the X-Files, I am an X-File. Phile, X-File.
Trust me.
I definitely want to watch that now.
Yeah, I love the X-Files myself. Kolchak, the Night Stalker. There were 2 movies, and then it inspired I think 18 episode TV series, and it's about an investigative reporter who investigates all sorts of the mythological, the supernatural, scary stories. The first one, The Night Stalker, is about a vampire in Las Vegas. So very, very cool. Yeah, it's a great, really, really cool. And Darren McGavin is absolutely outstanding in it. So I can't recommend that story enough. And I love the X-Files as well. You can definitely see the influence in there. And so while we're there, are both you X-Files fans? What's your favorite episode of the X-Files?
Him more so than me. I will say I did like the one with that shape-shifting serial killer. Those 2 episodes featuring him. I forget the name of the character, but
Toombs.
Toombs. Yeah. I really love when basically Mulder is kind of put in a Sherlock Holmes role, and he is kind of playing opposite these really horrible serial killers. I feel like that's like when Mulder's at his best.
How about you, Michael?
My favorite are the 2 Pusher episodes.
Ooh, yeah. Those are great. So for Steve, the Pusher episodes, this guy has the ability to make you, how best to put it? He was in like...
And mentally influence you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
He's very, very...
another really great villain.
And he has a tumor in his brain that's giving him these powers. Yeah. I also like, I don't know if you've seen this one, the one where they talked about the myth of the Wendigo, or and the shapeshifters, basically werewolves and the on the Indian reservation. Very, very cool. So
yeah, that was a great one. I really loved how they shot that.
Yeah.
You had no idea what was going on until that last little bit there.
Yeah, it was really cool, and it was cool for them to do something different and do something with on a Native American reservation and everything. I just loved how they did all that. It was really, really cool. So, and it's really a departure from the X-Files. So I guess that, I think I wanted to do that because I think it's cool what you guys are doing, and it really ties into how horror can be in all these different genres. So before we finish up, it's like, I want to give you guys the opportunity to speak to everybody who's watching on, Omenverse and horror within the Omenverse, but just generally the wider what you guys are doing with Omen Comics, because I think it's so cool what you're doing for indies, and I want you guys to be successful. So,
well, like the Omenverse is not specifically a horror comic, but there is a lot of horror elements in it. Specifically in the violence, there's a lot of supernatural, paranormal type themes going on. I really think that even if you're not a big horror fan, I think you can get into this. And if you're a horror fan, you're definitely going to get into it.
I think that's such a cool and important thing to say, because I don't think horror comics always have to be 100% horror. Horror is something that can fold into all sorts of different stories. It gets our blood racing. It pulls your attention, and a lot of times it makes you think. So that's really cool. Such a cool comment. How about you, Steve? What if you want to put a tagline or an exclamation point on this interview for people to come check out Omen Comics, what would you tell them?
Well, we put the fear into the mythological. I would say would be one of those things, at least in terms of the things that I do, because and not everything is like deeply horrific, I would say probably White Druid and Michael Nero is where I kind of like go in the most into full on horror. But I will say that I really enjoy just focusing on the fear of the unknown, focusing on the how unknowable the beings that we're going to be dealing with are. And because of that, most people, wandering into this are going to be way out of their depth. So I would say there's a little bit of the Lovecraftian, which I really love doing, just mixed into the things that we normally do with horror. And I just enjoy working with these characters and working with this universe and finding new angles to it that we haven't seen before.
Very cool. All right.
I would like to give one final shout out, if I could, to our editor, Russ Pirozek. We could not do this without us. He really keeps us in line with that. Our letterer, Guido Martinez, he's been lettering all our books. Really, really great stuff.
Awesome. Outstanding. Yeah, I mean, all of those positions are incredibly important. And like Johnny Hughes says here at Comic Crusaders, without the letterers, there'd be nothing to read. So,
Yeah.
Without the letterer, too many times they're left off of the credits, but the letterer is one of the most important jobs on a comic book because they're giving you the words that are part of the story. So absolutely. Everybody works together as a team to make a comic. So it's always important for everybody out there to realize everybody's doing a very vital part to bring you, the final product that you get to read and enjoy.
Well said.
All right. Outstanding. This has been a great interview, guys. I hope that you would like to come back some other time. If you ever have anything you want to share, please do come back. Real quick before we go, I just remembering one thing. I know, Steve, you were a part of ASAP Comics, which I'm part of, Perspectives, and you wanted to give a quick shout out for your story on Perspectives. I'd love to give you that opportunity real quick. So.
Yeah, the story that I did is called Blood and Ashes, and I kind of wanted to mention it because it did kind of start off a little bit into Lovecraftian horror, because the idea originally behind that world was, what if the Lovecraftian gods won? What if they had actually taken over the earth? Now, I don't go quite that far. I kind of decided, like in the middle of the process, that what I wanted to do was a little bit more Elric style high fantasy with it. So I took basically some of the same ideas, the idea of gods and demons that are more in the Lovecraftian vein, but I went a little bit less hardcore horror and more towards fantasy. The story itself is about a wandering swordswoman called Ashlyn Frost, who has shall we say, a dark and complicated past, and she arrives into this town and has to hunt a creature called the Scorn Beast on behalf of a wizard. And it doesn't go the way that anybody expects, least of all Ashlyn. So that's kind of what I've been doing for Perspectives. I'm planning on continuing it in a full-length novel at some point, but that's kind of in the process, and it's probably going to be a while before I have anything to announce on that front. But that's in the works.
If you guys will indulge me, Perspectives is out currently on Amazon. It benefits all the proceeds go to the Dyspraxica Foundation of the United Kingdom. So go ahead and check that out. There's a lot of great stories in there. There's one story that is from some guy named Nem. You can take it or leave it, but there's a lot of good stories.
It is a really creepy piece, I will say.
And there are plans in place for a Perspectives 2 for next year. So I will say that. So that's coming up good. And hopefully maybe we could drag Michael in and he can write a short story for us as well. So,
I would love that.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
So yeah, this has been great. Like I said, I reiterate, please feel free to come back on anytime. I'd love to interview you guys again for anything else that you're doing. So everyone out there, make sure that you can support Omen Comics on Patreon right there. There's a link below. You could also preview Omen Comics there at Global Comics. You can also purchase Omen Comics on Amazon and Comixology. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So make sure you check that out. So yeah, this has been a great interview. Definitely check out the Omenverse. Check out Omen Comics, Omen, Gallowsman, Guardians of Lamb, and also White Druid, right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I remembered. Now it's time to sign off before I forget anything else. So thank you, everybody. On behalf of myself and Michael and Steve, I want to say bye, happy viewing, and have a great weekend.